Hi, Lugal. Hi, Robert. Welcome back. Oh, my dearest, dearest fishies. Let me see. Hi, Archie. Thank you for joining me today. Hi, Atine. Hi, Anxiety. Hi, Sammy. Hi, Pro Self Love. Welcome. It looks like all of the platforms are working as they are supposed to. Let's see. Align bottom, auto scroll. I don't know entirely why, but the chat thing that I normally have on screen, I cannot seem to get it to work. But believe me, I have certainly tried. So, oh well, we won't worry about that. But believe me, I've tried to fix it. I just can't seem to get it to work. And let me also increase this just a little bit. I have to make some minor adjustments so that all of the fishies can be seen on the screen again. But thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope you are looking forward to more of The Wizard of Oz as much as I am. Hi, Cookie. Hello, Dova and Donnie. It's great to see you. Is my voice feeling better? Yes, my voice wasn't bad to begin with. Somebody on TikTok says my mic isn't picking up. They are correct. There we go. Now you should be able to hear me. I'm sorry about that. Such a calming voice. I'm glad you enjoy it. Welcome, TikTok chat, and welcome to all of our wonderful fishies. No sound detected? Yeah, you can detect it now, TikTok. My voice was sore after you did that. I haven't done the siren song recently. Oh, I have to fix this thingy. Oh, the struggles of being a streamer, right? And let me go ahead and change our audio so that we are in our reading world. Gonna be driving with you. Don't crash, please don't crash. Please drive safely, and I hope that at least while you are driving, I can help you feel comfortable and relaxed. It's not stressful. So, what I'm going to be doing today is we are going to be reading more of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, picking up where we left off, which I believe was, let me get back to it. It looks like the page reset. we were on... That's 14. I think we were on 18. The Great Art of the Magic Humbug. Missed the past few streams? Ah, yes, my voice is better. I believe I've recovered from being sick earlier this month. It's a perfect voice for mommy ASMR. We get a couple of people that do call me mommy, but it is in a wholesome regard, in the sense that I make people feel comfortable. Hi Shadowcat, welcome. How am I doing? I am doing wonderful, and I hope you guys are all doing well. It is a wonderful Friday, and I hope that you're ready to wind down after a long week. I hope your day went well, and I hope that your weekend coming up is going to also be well. Let's take a moment to just take a drink of water, take a deep breath, and then we're gonna start reading. Welcome, Styles. Smash, thank you for the compliment. I believe we left off on chapter 19, because the last thing we read was that the wizard has gone up in the balloon and away, leaving Dorothy behind, and they have been told to go to Glinda, the good witch that lives, is it in the north? I don't know. Okay, so they asked the monkeys, and then they asked the soldier, and they said, okay, Glinda, the Witch of the South. Hi, Billingham. If you are feeling cold, I do hope you guys get all warm and toasty, and hopefully with everything coming in the way of Canada and the US this weekend and early into next week, please do stay safe. Please do stay warm. Hi, KSL. ASMR? Yes, ASMR, but reading. Reading ASMR. Okay. Let me hit the beautiful button that says calibrate, and I'm gonna start reading. Put a 1 in chat if you are ready to get all snuggled up for reading time. I want to see all kinds of 1s in chat. We got a 1 and a crispy and pro self-love and a teen and anxiety and Sammy and dog. You know what? I'm counting that. And Styles, thank you for the kissies. Already cozy? Perfect, perfect, perfect. Let me see if I can hit the record button. It does work. Perfect. Chapter 19. Attacked by the Fighting Trees. The next morning, Dorothy kissed the pretty green girl goodbye, and they all shook hands with the soldier with the green whiskers, who had walked with them as far as the gate. When the guardian of the gate saw them again, he wondered greatly that they could leave the beautiful city to get into new trouble, but he at once unlocked their spectacles, which he had put back into the green box, and gave them many good wishes to carry with them. "You are now our ruler," he said to the Scarecrow, "so you must come back to us as soon as possible." "I certainly shall if I am able," the Scarecrow replied, "but I must help Dorothy to get home first." As Dorothy bade the good-natured guardian a last farewell, she said, "I have been very kindly treated in your lovely city, and everyone has been good to me. I cannot tell you how grateful I am." "Don't try, my dear," he answered. "We should like to keep you with us, but if it is your wish to return to Kansas, I hope you will find a way." He then opened the gate of the outer wall, and they walked forth and started upon their journey. The sun shone brightly as our friends faced their faces, as our friends turned their faces toward the land of the South. They were all in the best of spirits and laughed and chatted together. Dorothy was once more filled with the hope of getting home, and the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman were glad to be of use to her. As for the lion, he sniffed the fresh air with delight and whisked his tail from side to side in pure joy at being in the country again, while Toto ran around them and chased the moths and butterflies, barking merrily all the time. "City life does not agree with me at all," remarked the lion as they walked along at a brisk pace. "I have lost much flesh since I lived there, and now I'm anxious for a chance to show the other beasts how courageous I have grown." Now they turned and took a last look at the Emerald City. All they could see was a mess of towers and steeples behind the green walls, and high above everything the spires and dome of the Palace of Oz. "Oz was not such a bad wizard after all," said the Tin Woodman, as he felt his heart rattling around in his breast. "He knew how to give me brains, too. Very good brains, too." Wrong voice. "He knew how to give me brains, and very good brains, too," said the Scarecrow. "If Oz had taken a dose of the same courage he gave me," added the lion, "he would have been a brave man." Dorothy said nothing. Oz had not kept the promise he made her, but he had done his best, so she forgave him. As he said, he was a good man, even if he was a bad wizard. The first day's journey was through the green fields and bright flowers that stretched about the Emerald City on every side. They slept that night on the grass, with nothing but the stars over them, and they rested very well indeed. In the morning, they traveled on until they came to a thick wood. There was no way of going around it, for it seemed to extend to the right and left as far as they could see, and, besides, they did not dare change the direction of their journey for fear of getting lost. So they looked for a palace. So they looked for the place where it would be easiest to get into the forest. The Scarecrow, who was in the lead, finally discovered a big tree with such wide-spreading branches that there was room for the party to pass underneath. So he walked forward to the tree, but just as he came under the first branches, they bent down and twined around him, and the next minute he was raised from the ground and flung headlong among his fellow travelers. This did not hurt the Scarecrow, but it surprised him, and he looked rather dizzy when Dorothy picked him up.
"Here's another space between the trees," called the lion. "Let me try it first," said the Scarecrow, "for it doesn't hurt me to get thrown about."
He walked up to another tree as he spoke, but its branches immediately seized him and tossed him back again.
"This is strange," exclaimed Dorothy. "What shall we do?"
"The trees seem to have made up their minds to fight us and stop our journey," remarked the lion. "I believe I will try it myself," said the woodman, and shouldering his axe, he marched up to the first tree that had handled the Scarecrow so roughly. When a big branch bent down to seize him, the woodman chopped at it so fiercely that he cut it in two. At once, the tree began shaking all its branches as if in pain, and the Tin Woodman passed safely under it. "Come on,"
he shouted to the others.
"Be quick."
They all ran forward and passed under the tree without injury, except Toto, who was caught by a small branch and shaken until he howled. But the woodman promptly chopped off the branch and set the little dog free. The other trees of the forest did nothing to keep them back, so they made up their minds that only the first row of trees could bend down their branches, and that probably these were the policemen of the forest, and given this wonderful power in order to keep strangers out of it. The four travelers walked with ease through the trees until they came to the farther edge of the wood. Then, to their surprise, they found before them a high wall which seemed to be made of white china. It was smooth, like the surface of a dish, and higher than their heads.
"What shall we do?" "What shall we do now?"
asked Dorothy.
"I will make a ladder," said the Tin Woodman, "for we certainly must climb over the wall."
And that is the end of chapter 19, and in perfect timing, we do have an advertisement coming up. This ad will play on Twitch, and I believe we will also be running an ad on YouTube as well. So take a quick pause, take a drink of your water. If you are driving, I hope that you also have a drink of water, as I will also take a drink of water. Yes, I do apologize. It is time for ads. But we will wait for our fishies to come back before we resume the story. So worry not, we will still be here. I'm not sure how the positioning of the vertical stream on YouTube, I don't know how that is going. Slenderman Gaming. Definitely not gaming. There's no gaming happening here. Welcome, Ben. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am surprised that the vertical live stream is not also being sent to YouTube. but perhaps this is a setting that I will also need to specify. I'm glad that you're enjoying. We try to keep it as cozy as we can here. Hi, welcome. Let me also refresh my page in case that there are some things that I need to fix. Hello. One thing that I may also need to adjust, because it doesn't seem that YouTube is allowing me to change, is the potential for my character to be in the center, which may be abnormal to see for you guys. Whoa. Whoa. Look at her go. She's moving. She's going. And that means that these need to be centered. I'm just a little bit off center. Hey, what a better thing. What else would I be doing with my break? It looks like the ads are done though, so we are going to resume reading. I love your voice. Thank you. I'm glad you like it. Good day to you, ASMR Mans, and hello, Akafaka. What an interesting name. Put a 1 in chat if you are ready to resume reading, and if you're driving, please do not text and drive. Just nod your head. I can see you. I'm watching, always. I'm going to take one more sip of water so that I am definitely hydrated. A teen is ready to continue reading. Anxiety is ready to continue reading. Pro-self-love is ready to continue reading. Look at all of my beautiful readers. My sweet little fishies. I will continue reading for you. Chapter 20. The Dainty China Country. While the woodman was making a ladder from wood which he found in the forest, Dorothy lay down and slept, for she was tired by the long walk. The lion also curled himself up to sleep, and Toto lay beside him. The scarecrow watched the woodman while he worked, and said to him, "I cannot think why this wall is here, nor what it is made of." "Rest your brains and do not worry about the wall," replied the woodman. "We have to climb over it. We shall know what it is on the other side." After a time, the ladder was finished. It looked clumsy, but the Tin Woodman was sure it was strong. It would answer their purpose. The Scarecrow waked Dorothy and the Lion and Toto and told them the ladder was ready. The Scarecrow climbed up the ladder first, but he was so awkward that Dorothy had to follow close behind and keep him from falling off. When he got his head over the top of the wall, the Scarecrow said, "Oh my!" "Go on!" exclaimed Dorothy. So the Scarecrow climbed farther up and sat down on the top of the wall, and Dorothy put her head over and cried, "Oh my!" just as the Scarecrow had done. Then Toto came up and immediately began to bark, but Dorothy made him be still. The lion climbed up the ladder next, and the Tin Woodman came last. Both of them cried, "Oh my!" as soon as they looked over the wall. When they were all sitting in a row on top of the wall, they looked down and saw a strange sight. Before them was a great stretch of country, having a floor as smooth and shining and white as the bottom of a big platter. Scattered around were many houses made entirely of china and painted in the brightest colors. These houses were quite small, the biggest of them reaching only as high as Dorothy's waist. There were also pretty little barns with china fences around them, and many cows and sheep and horses and pigs and chickens, all made of china, were standing about in groups. But the strangest of all were the people who lived in this queer country. There were milkmaids and shepherdesses, with brightly colored bodices and golden spots all over their gowns, and princesses with most gorgeous frocks of silver and gold and purple, and shepherds dressed in knee breeches with pink and yellow and blue stripes down them, and golden buckles on their shoes, and princes with jeweled crowns upon their heads, wearing ermine robes and satin doublets, and funny clowns in ruffled gowns with round red spots upon their cheeks and tall pointed caps. And, strangest of all, these people were all made of china, even to their clothes, and were so small that the tallest of them was no higher than Dorothy's knee. No one did so much as look at the travelers at first, except one little purple china dog with an extra large head, which came to the wall and barked at them in a tiny voice, afterwards running away.
"How shall we get down?"
asked Dorothy. They found the ladder so heavy they could not pull it up, so the Scarecrow fell off the wall, and the others jumped down upon him so that the hard floor would not hurt their feet. Of course, they took pains not to light on his head, not to land on his head, and get pins in their feet. When all were safely down, they picked up the Scarecrow, whose body was quite flattened out, and patted his straw into shape again.
"We must cross this strange place in order to get to the other side,"
said Dorothy,
"for it would be unwise for us to go any other way except due south."
They began walking through the country of China people, and the first thing they came to was a China milkmaid milking a China cow. As they drew near, the cow suddenly gave a kick and kicked over the stool, the pail, and even the milkmaid herself, and all fell on the china floor with a great clatter. Dorothy was shocked to see that the cow had broken her leg off, and that the pail was lying in several small pieces, while the poor milkmaid had a nick in her left elbow.
"There!"
cried the milkmaid angrily.
"See what you have done! My cow has broken her leg, and I must take her to the mender's shop and have it glued on again. What do you mean by coming here and frightening my cow?" "I'm very sorry,"
returned Dorothy.
"Please forgive us."
But the milkmaid was much too vexed to make any answer, she picked up the leg sulkily and led her cow away, the poor animal limping on all 3 legs. As she left them, the milkmaid cast many reproachful glances over her shoulder at the clumsy strangers, holding her nicked elbow close to her side. Dorothy was quite grieved at this mishap. "We must be very careful here," said the kind-hearted woodman, "or we may hurt these pretty little people so they will never get over it." A little farther on, Dorothy met a most beautifully dressed young princess, who stopped short as she saw the strangers and started to run away. Dorothy wanted to see more of the princess, so she ran after her, but the China girl cried out,
"Don't chase me! Don't chase me!"
She had such a frightened little voice that Dorothy stopped and said,
"Why not?" "Because,"
answered the princess, also stopping at a safe distance away.
"if I run, I may fall down and break myself."
"But could you not be mended?" asked the girl.
"Oh, yes, but one is never so pretty after being mended, you know."
"I suppose not," said Dorothy.
"Now, there is Mr. Joker, one of our clowns,"
continued the China girl,
"who is always trying to stand upon his head. He has broken himself so often that he is mended in 100 places, but doesn't look pretty at all. Here he comes now, so you can see for yourself."
Indeed, a jolly little clown came walking toward them, and Dorothy could see that in spite of his pretty clothes of red and yellow and green, he was completely covered in cracks, running every which way and showing plainly that he had been mended in many places. The clown put his hands in his pockets, and after puffing out his cheeks and nodding his head at them saucily, he said, How do I do this voice?
"My lady fair, why do you stare at poor old Mr. Joker? You're quite stiff and prim as if you'd eaten up a poker." "Be quiet, sir,"
said the princess.
"Can't you see these are strangers and should be treated with respect?" "Well, that's respect, I expect,"
declared the clown, and immediately stood upon his head.
"Don't mind Mr. Joker,"
said the princess to Dorothy.
"He is considerably cracked in his head, and that makes him foolish."
"Oh, I don't mind him a bit," said Dorothy. "But you are so beautiful," she continued, "that I'm sure I could love you dearly. Won't you let me carry you back to Kansas and stand you on Aunt Em's mantle? I could carry you in my basket."
"That would make me very unhappy,"
answered the China princess.
"You see, here in our country we live contentedly and can talk and move around as we please. But whenever any of us are taken away, our joints at once stiffen, and we can only stand straight and look pretty. Of course, that is always expected of us when we are on mantels and cabinets and drawing-room tables. But our lives are much pleasanter here in our own country."
I would not make you unhappy for all the world," exclaimed Dorothy.
"So, I'll just say goodbye." "Goodbye,"
replied the princess. They walked carefully through the China country. The little animals and all the people scampered out of their way. fearing the strangers would break them. And after an hour or so, the travelers reached the other side of the country and came to another China wall. It was not so high as the first, however, and by standing upon the lion's back, they managed to scramble to the top. Then the lion gathered his legs under him and jumped on the wall. But just as he jumped, he upset a china church with his tail and smashed it all to pieces.
That was too bad,
said Dorothy.
but I really think we were lucky in not doing these little people more harm than breaking a cow's leg and a church. They are all so brittle.
They are indeed, said the Scarecrow, and I am thankful. I'm made of straw and cannot be easily damaged. There are worse things in the world than being a scarecrow. That is the end of chapter 20, and in perfect time, we do have another ad coming up. Welcome to our new viewers. Welcome to our new followers. Thank you to everyone on TikTok, YouTube, and Twitch joining me today. Odenhurst, welcome. Hi, Logan. Yes, you are a good boy. You are doing a fantastic job of just listening along and enjoying listening to the story. Don't forget to take a drink of water. Gimme. I am full of water. And if you are all comfy in your bed, then I hope that maybe I can help you fall asleep tonight. I am going to take advantage of this ad break and run to the bathroom. So just enjoy listening to the background music, and I will see if we can get another puzzle started. Okay. Of course, I'm happy to provide good vibes. And I do hope that everyone impacted by the winter storm across Canada and the US are able to stay warm and stay safe. Let's do another puzzle. We have started another puzzle. If you are interested in joining the community puzzle, you can either type the word puzzle in Twitch chat or check out my Beacons page and you'll find the community puzzle tab. Okay, we are back. Thank you for the hydrate. It's important to stay hydrated, whether you are reading or not. Are you ready to continue reading? Put a 1 in chat if you would like. Chapter 21. I'm very excited to finish up this story. A teen is ready. Anxiety is ready. Sleepy Bug, thank you for being here. Sleepy Bug is ready. ASMR Mans, I did see that you are interested in the short ASMR redemption. I haven't had anybody redeem that yet. Hi Talbot, it's great to see you. I hope that you are doing exceptionally well. Wood, thank you for being here, and welcome back. I think that we have enough sleepy fishies that are ready to continue reading. Chapter 21. The lion becomes the king of beasts. After climbing down from the China Wall, the travelers found themselves in a disagreeable country, full of bogs and marshes, and covered with tall, rank grass. It was difficult to walk without falling into muddy holes, for the grass was so thick that it hid them from sight. However, by carefully picking their way, they got safely along until they reached solid ground. But here the country seemed wilder than before, and after a long, tiresome walk through the underbrush, they entered another forest, where the trees were bigger and older than any they had ever seen.
This forest is perfectly delightful, declared the lion, looking around him with joy. Never have I seen a more beautiful place. It seems gloomy, said the scarecrow. Not a bit of it, answered the lion. I should like to live here all my life. See how soft the dried leaves are under your feet, and how rich and green the moss is that clings to those old trees. Surely no wild beast could wish a pleasanter home.
Perhaps there are wild beasts in the forest now,
said Dorothy.
I suppose there are,
returned the lion.
But I do not see any. I do not see any of them about.
They walked through the forest until it became too dark to go any farther. Dorothy and Toto and the lion lay down to sleep, while the woodman and the scarecrow kept watch over them as usual. When morning came, they started again. Before they had gone far, they heard a low rumble, as if of the growling of many wild animals. Toto whimpered a little, but none of the others was frightened. And they kept along the well-trodden path until they came to an opening in the wood, in which there were 100 there were gathered hundreds of beasts of every variety. There were tigers and elephants and bears and wolves and foxes and all the others in the natural history, and for a moment Dorothy was afraid. But the lion explained that the animals were holding a meeting, and he judged by their snarling and growling that they were in great trouble. As he spoke, several of the beasts caught sight of him, and at once the great assemblage hushed as if by magic. The biggest of the tigers came up to the lion and bowed, saying,
"Welcome, O King of Beasts. You have come in good time to fight our enemy and bring peace to all the animals of the forest once more." "What is your trouble?" asked the lion quietly. "We are all threatened," answered the tiger, "by a fierce enemy which has lately come into this forest. It is a most tremendous spider. It is a most tremendous monster, like a great spider, with a body as big as an elephant and legs as long as a tree trunk. It has 8 of these long legs, and drags it to his mouth, where he eats it, as a spider does a fly. None of us is safe while this creature is alive. And we had called a meeting to decide how to take care of ourselves when you came among us."
The lion thought for a moment.
"Are there any other lions in this forest?" he asked. "No, there were some, but the monster has eaten them all. And besides, they were none of them nearly so large and brave as you. If I put an end to your family..."
No, no, that is not what I meant to say. Sorry, I'm dyslexic. My eyeballs skipped the page.
I'm sorry, that's a really funny mistake. I'm so sorry.
Do not end my family.
How am I going to take myself seriously after that?
If I put an end to your enemy, will you bow down to me and obey me as king of the forest?" inquired the lion. "We will do that gladly," returned the tiger. And all the other beasts roared with a mighty roar. "We will!" "Where is the great spider of yours now?" asked the lion. "Yonder, among the oak trees," said the tiger, pointing with his forefoot. "Take good care of these friends of mine," said the lion, "and I will go at once to fight this monster."
He bade his comrades goodbye and marched proudly away to do battle with the enemy. 1 second. There we go. The great spider was lying asleep when the lion found him, and it looked so ugly that its foe turned up his nose in disgust. Its legs were quite as long as the tiger had said, and its body covered with coarse black hair. It had a mouth, a great mouth, with a row of sharp teeth a foot long. but its head was joined to the pudgy body by a neck as slender as a wasp's waist. This gave the lion a hint of the best way to attack the creature. And as he knew it was easier to fight it asleep than awake, he gave a great spring and landed directly upon the monster's back. Then, with one blow of his heavy paw, all armed with sharp claws, he knocked the spider's head from its body. Jumping down, he watched it until the long legs stopped wiggling, when he knew it was quite dead. The lion went back to the opening where the beasts of the forest were waiting for him and said proudly,
"You need fear your enemy no longer."
Then the beasts bowed down to the lion as their king, and he promised to come back and rule over them as soon as Dorothy was safely on her way to Kansas. Okay, we will take this opportunity to go ahead and pause and run the ad again so that we don't have to deal with the ad while I'm already reading. I'm sorry about that mistake. I hope it totally didn't destroy your immersion into the story. And don't forget, I think you still have the ability to turn the lights on and off if you're not a fan of this glowing effect. You can !lights if you want to turn that off. We weren't lying about being a voice actress, that's peak. Thank you, Michael. If you guys are interested in any of my other voice acting examples, I do have available on YouTube my character voice acting demo reel. It is also embedded on my Beacons link. The command isn't actually set up for TikTok, but I have a handy dandy little button here that allows me to do it for you. Unfortunately, TikTok does not like sharing their API or whatever it is. But again, I hope everyone is feeling nice and relaxed. And if you need some help to wind down, let's just take a nice deep breath together, okay? Ready? Inhale. And exhale. When does my stream end? I will be live for 1 more hour. Let's take another deep breath and then I will resume reading, okay? Ready? Inhale. And exhale. Good job. Good job. Okay. I hope you're ready to continue reading. Chapter 22. Chapter 22. The Country of the Quadlings. The 4 travelers passed through the rest of the forest in safety, and when they came out from its gloom, saw before them a steep hill, covered from top to bottom with great pieces of rock.
"That will be hard to climb," said the Scarecrow. But we must get over the hill."
Oh my God, my stomach is rumbling. I'm so sorry. I could hear that.
"But we must get over the hill, nevertheless."
So he led the way, and the others followed. They had nearly reached the first rock when they heard a rough voice cry out,
"Keep back!" "Who are you?"
asked the Scarecrow. Then a head showed itself over the rock, and in the same voice said,
"This hill belongs to us, and we don't allow anyone to cross it."
"But we must cross it," said the Scarecrow. "We are going to the country of Quadlings."
"But you shall not,"
replied the voice, and there stepped from behind the rock the strangest man the travelers had ever seen. He was quite short and stout and had a big head, which was flat at the top and supported by a thick neck full of wrinkles. But he had no arms at all, and seeing this, the Scarecrow did not fear that so helpless a creature could prevent them from climbing the hill. So he said,
I'm sorry not to do as you wish, but we must pass over your hill whether you like it or not."
And he walked boldly forward. As quick as lightning, the man's head shot forward, and his neck stretched out until the top of his head, where it was flat, struck the Scarecrow in the middle and sent him tumbling over and over down the hill. Almost as quickly as it came, the head went back to the body, and the man laughed harshly as he said,
"It isn't as easy as you think."
A chorus of boisterous laughter came from the other rocks, and Dorothy saw hundreds of armless hammerheads upon the hillside, one behind every rock. The lion became quite angry at the laughter caused by the Scarecrow's mishap, and giving a louder roar that echoed like thunder, he dashed up the hill. Again, a head shot swiftly out, and the great lion went rolling down the hill as if he had been struck by a cannonball. Dorothy ran down and helped the Scarecrow to his feet, and the lion came up to her, feeling rather bruised and sore, and said,
"It is useless to fight people with shooting heads. No one can withstand them."
"What can we do then?"
she asked.
"Call the winged monkeys," suggested the Tin Woodman. "You have still the right to command them once more."
"Very well,"
she answered. Putting on the golden cap, she uttered the magic words. The monkeys were as prompt as ever, and in a few moments, the entire band stood before her.
"What are your commands?"
inquired the king of the monkeys, bowing low.
"Carry us over the hill to the country of the Quadlings,"
answered the girl.
"It shall be done,"
said the king, and at once the winged monkeys caught the four travelers and Toto up in their arms and flew away with them. As they passed over the hill, the hammerheads yelled with vexation and shot their heads high in the air, but they could not reach the winged monkeys, which carried Dorothy and her comrades safely over the hill and set them down in the beautiful country of the Quadlings.
This is the last time you can summon us, said the leader to Dorothy. So, goodbye, and good luck to you.
Goodbye, and thank you very much,
returned the girl, and the monkeys rose into the air and were out of sight in a twinkling. The country of the Quadlings seemed rich and happy. There was field upon field of ripening grain, with well-paved roads running between, and pretty, rippling brooks with strong bridges across them. The fences and houses and bridges were all painted bright red, just as they had been painted yellow in the country of the Winkies, and blue in the country of the Munchkins. The Quadlings themselves, who were short and fat and looked chubby and good-natured, were dressed all in red, which showed bright against the green grass and the yellowing grain. The monkeys had set them down near a farmhouse, and the 4 travelers walked up to it and knocked on the door. It was opened by the farmer's wife, and when Dorothy asked for something to eat, the woman gave them all a good dinner, with 3 kinds of cake and 4 kinds of cookies, and a bowl of milk for Toto.
How far is it to the castle of Glinda?
Asked the child.
It is not a great way, answered the farmer's wife. Take the road to the south, and you will soon reach it. Thanking the good woman, they started afresh and walked by the fields and across the pretty bridges until they saw before them a very beautiful castle. Before the gates were 3 young girls dressed in handsome red uniforms, trimmed with gold braid, and as Dorothy approached, one of them said to her, "Why have you come to the South Country?"
To see the good witch who rules here,
she answered.
Will you take me to her?
Let me have your name, and I will ask Glinda if she will receive you. They told who they were, and the girl soldier went into the castle. After a few moments, she came back to say that Dorothy and the others were to be admitted at once. And that was a rather short chapter. And it looks like the next chapter, looks like the last chapter that we have in the book is like only a few sentences. So the next chapter that we will read is going to also include the final chapter. Read some yaoi next. That's a unique request, but I have good news for you. You might be interested in the next story that we have, that we will read. Also, a special thank you to all of the viewers that we have on TikTok. Thank you to everyone who is liking the stream on TikTok. The more you like the stream, the more that the algorithm will push out the stream to others. But a also big thank you and big appreciation to all of our TikTok gifters. Thank you so much for all of the gifts. I do greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Yuki-kun, and Bobski, and Logan, and Iser, and Utinkwa. I also did that stretch, Sammy. Here, you know what? Let me get my hand tracking back. We will play an ad while we are in between chapters. But just a reminder again, if you are interested in solving a puzzle while you listen to me read, you can either join the community puzzle via my beacons, which you'll find on my profile, or if you are specifically watching on Twitch, you can say the magic word puzzle, and you will get the link to the puzzle. Sam, welcome. Let's go ahead and play the ad on Twitch and give a big stretch, chat. A big stretch and a yawn. And I hope you are all wrapped up and comfy in your blankets. I'm really trying to hold on to my stomach so that it doesn't keep growling as I'm reading. Let me just try to get comfy here. I'm trying to adjust the way that I'm sitting. And if you haven't taken a sip of water just now, this would be an excellent time to get a sip of water, okay? Stay nice and hydrated. Stretches are so satisfying to do. Honestly, I don't think I do enough daily stretches. One last stretch. Yeah, okay. That was perfect. So we have 23 minutes of no ads. So I am going to read the end of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Do you have a regular stream schedule? Yes, I stream Thursday and Friday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Time Zone, and Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time Zone. We try to keep our weekend time so our European viewers get to enjoy having a reading to put them to sleep too. And thank you so much, Jake. Thank you for the paper crane. Thank you very much for the gift. Put a 1 in chat if you are ready to hear the end of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Pro Self-Love is ready. Atine is ready. Wood is ready. Or did we put everyone to sleep already? Melanora is ready. And hey, if you are not ready for the end of the book, put a 2. I love your voice. Thank you, Alexi. Sammy is ready and Anxiety is ready. It makes me so happy that you are here and that you enjoy listening to these stories. It brings me so much joy and comfort that I get to not only be part of your day, but that I can be a positive part of your day. Anthony is also ready. Okay. Let's read the end of the Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Okay. Chapter 23. Glinda the Good Witch grants Dorothy's wish. Before they went to see Glinda, however, they were to be taken to a room of the castle where Dorothy washed her face and combed her hair, and the lion shook the dust out of his mane, and the scarecrow patted himself into his best shape, and the woodman polished his tin and oiled his joints. When they were all quite presentable, they followed the soldier girl into a big room where the witch Glinda sat upon a throne of rubies. She was both beautiful and young to their eyes. Her hair was a rich red in color and fell in flowing ringlets over her shoulders. Her dress was pure white, but her eyes were blue, and they looked kindly upon the little girl. "What can I do for you, my child?" she asked. Dorothy told the witch all her story. How the cyclone had brought her to the land of Oz, how she had found her companions, and of the wonderful adventures they had met with.
"And my greatest wish now," she added, "is to get back to Kansas, for Aunt Em will surely think something dreadful has happened to me, and that will make her put on mourning. And unless the crops are better this year than they were last, I'm sure Uncle Henry cannot afford it."
Glinda leaned forward and kissed the sweet upturned face of the loving little girl. "Bless your heart, dear," she said. "I am sure I can tell you of a way to get back to Kansas." Then she added, "But if I do, you must give me the golden cap."
"Willingly!"
exclaimed Dorothy.
"Indeed, it is of no use to me now. And when you have it, you can command the winged monkeys 3 times.
"And I think I shall need their services just those 3 times," answered Glinda, smiling. Dorothy then gave her the golden cap, and the witch said to the scarecrow, "What will you do when Dorothy has left us?"
"I will return to the Emerald City," he replied, "for Oz has made me its ruler, and the people like me. The only thing that worries me is how to cross the Hill of the Hammerheads."
"By means of the golden cap, I shall command the winged monkeys to carry you to the gates of Emerald City," said Glinda, "for it would be a shame to deprive the people of so wonderful a ruler."
"Am I really wonderful?"
asked the scarecrow. "You are unusual," replied Glinda. Turning to the Tin Woodman, she asked, "What will become of you when Dorothy leaves this country?" He leaned on his axe and thought a moment. Then he said,
"The Winkies were very kind to me, and wanted me to rule over them after the Wicked Witch died. I am fond of the Winkies, and if I could get back again to the country of the West, I should like nothing better than to rule over them forever."
"My second command to the winged monkeys," said Glinda, "will be that they carry you safely to the land of the Winkies. Your brain may not be so large to look out, to look at those of the as those of the Scarecrow. But you are really brighter than he is when you are well polished, and I am sure you will rule the Winkies wisely and well. Then the witch looked at the big, shaggy lion and asked, "When Dorothy has returned to her own home, what will become of you?"
"Over the hill of the Hammerheads," he answered, "lies a grand old forest, and all the beasts that live there have made me their king. If I could only get back to this forest, I would pass my life very happily there."
"My third command to the winged monkeys," said Glinda, "shall be to carry you to your forest. Then, having used up the powers of the golden cap, I shall give it to the king of the monkeys, that he and his band may thereafter be free forevermore." The Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman and the Lion now thanked the good witch earnestly for her kindness, and Dorothy exclaimed,
You are certainly as good as you are beautiful. But you have not yet told me how to get back to Kansas.
"Your silver shoes will carry you over the desert," replied Glinda. "If you had known their power, you could have gone back to your Aunt Em the very first day you came to this country."
"But then I should not have had my wonderful brains," cried the Scarecrow. "I would have passed my whole life in the farmer's cornfield."
"And I should not have had my lovely heart," said the Tin Woodman. "I might have stood and rusted in the forest till the end of the world."
"And I should have lived a coward forever,"
declared the Lion.
"And no beast in all the forest would have had a good word to say to me."
This is all true,
said Dorothy.
and I am glad I was of use to these good friends. But now that each of them has had what he's desired most, and each is happy and having a kingdom to rule besides, I think I should like to go back to Kansas.
"The silver shoes," said the good witch, "have wonderful powers, and one of the most curious things about them is that they can carry you to any place in the world in 3 steps, and each step will be made in the wink of an eye. All you have to do is to knock the heels together 3 times and command the shoes to carry you wherever you wish to go."
If that is so,
said the child joyfully,
I will ask them to carry me back to Kansas at once.
She threw her arms around the lion's neck and kissed him, patting his big head tenderly. Then she kissed the Tin Woodman, who was weeping in a way most dangerous to his joints. But she hugged the soft, stuffed body of the Scarecrow in her arms instead of kissing his painted face, and found she was crying herself at this sorrowful parting from her loving comrades. Glinda the Good stepped down from her ruby throne to give the little girl a goodbye kiss, and Dorothy thanked her for all the kindness she had shown to her friends and herself. Dorothy now took Toto up solemnly in her arms, and having said one last goodbye, she clapped the heels of her shoes together 3 times, saying,
Take me home to Aunt Em.
Instantly, she was whirling through the air so swiftly that all she could see or feel was the wind whistling past her ears. The silver shoes took but 3 steps, and when she stopped so suddenly that she rolled over upon the grass several times before she knew where she was. At length, however, she sat up and looked about her.
Good gracious!
She cried, for she was sitting on the broad Kansas prairie, and just before her was the new farmhouse Uncle Henry built after the cyclone had carried away the old one. Uncle Henry was milking the cows in the barnyard, and Toto had jumped out of her arms and was running toward the barn, barking furiously. Dorothy stood up and found she was in her stocking feet, for the silver shoes had fallen off in her flight through the air and were lost forever in the desert. Chapter 24. Home Again. Aunt Em had just come out of the house to water the cabbages when she looked up and saw Dorothy running toward her. "My darling child!" she cried, folding the little girl in her arms and covering her face in the kisses. With kisses. "Where in the world did you come from?"
From the land of Oz,
said Dorothy gravely.
and here is Toto too. And Aunt Em, I'm so glad to be home again.
The end. That was it. That was the end of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Watercat and Kev, thank you so much for the hydrates. Fallen, it is great to finally see you. I know it was a very short chapter. And Nitrogen, thank you so much for the galaxy. Thank you for the gift. It was a wonderful story, and now I feel like I can finally admit I have actually never seen the Wizard of Oz movie. And with the releases of the Wicked movies, I have not seen them yet either. My goodness, more hydrates.
Oh, it's cold water.
I'm so late to this book reading. Well, is there any section that my fishies would like me to go back and reread? Hydration is important. Now, if you would like me to continue reading, I can certainly go back in the book and pick from a section and start reading again. But if you are ready to relax, maybe you just want to listen to my voice while you are busy working on something. But this would be an excellent time to let you know that you can check out my YouTube channel if I'm not available on stream. I have many videos of reading that you can listen to. And of course, as a reminder, they are public domain or posted with the author's permission, as reading copywritten books for public entertainment is copyright infringement. And I don't want to get sued. Do we have any takers for continuing to read more of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz? Or perhaps, does anyone know in what order the Wizard of Oz books are supposed to be read? Getting sued is usually so cozy. Well, I desire not to get sued, but I wouldn't be opposed to reading to you all the boring information on said lawsuit paperwork. We could, if you so desire it, read The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, or continue reading Frankenstein. Where we last left off reading Frankenstein was somewhere in which the creation begins to regale their story, because that is what the rest of the book leads us to. I don't recall in which book, in which chapter this begins. Let's see. My day is going very well, and I am very, very happy to be here. Okay, I believe I have found it. Chapter 11. We have, in chapter 10 is where our main character, which Sherlock book? The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, first published in 1892. Is that supposed to be Guess Who Is Back after his holiday trip? Is that you, Fallen? You are back. How have you been? I have been well. My holiday trip was quite exciting and an amazing, relaxing time. However, I did, get sick at the end of the holidays. I believe we were on chapter 4 of The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. If you are watching on TikTok, please do continue to like the stream. The more that you like the stream, the more the algorithm will push out the live stream to more individuals who would love to listen to some reading. It's alright, Fallen. I am fully recovered since then. Only a minor cough sometimes bothers me. This chapter of Sherlock Holmes is the Boscombe Valley Mystery. We do have an ad about to play on Twitch. Just a warning for you. If you would like to not experience ads I invite you to consider subscribing. But if you are unable to subscribe and you do not have the financial means, that is okay. You are still supporting by watching the advertisements. Tim, thank you so much for the gift. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Is this ASMR? Yes, I would call this reading ASMR. We could read The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, The Boscombe Valley Mystery. We could continue reading Frankenstein. This is why I sub, watch on YouTube and TikTok so no ads. Yeah. Okay. I can continue with Frankenstein. Thank you for the roses. Frankenstein for me was quite the challenge, and I'm not entirely sure why I struggled so much to read it. I think it's not only the sentence structure, but the way of speaking. Take a deep breath with me. Good job. Chapter 11. It is with considerable difficulty that I remember the original era of my being. All the events of that period appear confused and indistinct. A strange multiplicity of sensations seize me, and I saw, felt, heard, and smelt at the same time, and it was, indeed, a long time before I learned to distinguish between the operations of my various senses. By degrees, I remember, a stronger light pressed upon my nerves, so that I was obliged to shut my eyes. Darkness then came over me and troubled me, but hardly had I felt this when, by opening my eyes, as I now suppose, the light poured in upon me again. I walked, and, I believe, descended, but I presently found a great alteration in my sensations. Before, dark and opaque bodies had surrounded me, impervious to my touch or sight. But I now found that I could wander on at liberty, with no obstacles which I could not either surmount or avoid. The light became more and more oppressive to me, and the heat wearying me as I walked, I sought a place where I could receive shade. This was the forest near Ingolstadt, and here I lay by the side of a brook resting from my fatigue, until I felt tormented by hunger and thirst. This roused me from my nearly dormant state, and I ate some berries which I found hanging on the trees or lying on the ground, and slaked my thirst at the brook, and then lying down, was overcome by sleep. It was hard when I awoke. I felt cold also, and half frightened, as it were, instinctively, finding myself so desolate. Before I had quitted your apartment on a sensation of cold, I had covered myself with some clothes, but these were insufficient to secure me from the dews of the night. I was a poor, helpless, miserable wretch. I knew. I was a poor, helpless, miserable wretch. I knew, and I could distinguish, nothing. But feeling pain invade me on all sides, I sat down and wept. Soon a gentle light stole over the heavens and gave me a sensation of pleasure. I started up and beheld a radiant form rise from among the trees. The moon, I gazed with a kind of wonder. It moved slowly, but it enlightened my path, and I again went in search of berries. I was still cold when under one of the trees I found a huge cloak with which I covered myself and sat down upon the ground. No distinct ideas occupied my mind. All was confused. I felt light and hunger and thirst and darkness. Innumerable sounds rang in my ears, and on all sides various scents saluted me. The only object I could distinguish was the bright moon, and I fixed my eyes on that with pleasure. Several changes of day and night passed, and the orb of night had greatly lessened, which I began to distinguish my sensations from each other. I gradually saw plainly the clear stream that supplied me with drink, and the trees that shaded me with their foliage. I was delighted when I first discovered that a pleasant sound, which often saluted my ears, proceeded from the throats of the little winged animals who had often intercepted the light from my eyes. I began also to observe with greater accuracy the forms that surrounded me, and to perceive the boundaries of the radiant roof of light which canopied me. Sometimes I tried to imitate the pleasant songs of the birds, but was unable. Sometimes I wished to express my sensations in my own mode, but the uncouth and inarticulate sounds which broke from me frightened me into silence again. The moon had disappeared from the night, and again, in a lessened form, showed itself while I still remained in the forest. My sensations had by this time become distinct, and my mind received every day additional ideas. My eyes became accustomed to the light and to perceive objects in their right forms. I distinguished the insect from the herb, and by degrees, one herb from another. I found that the sparrow uttered none but harsh notes, whilst those of the blackbird and thrush were sweet and enticing. One day when I was oppressed by cold, I found a fire which had been left by some wandering beggars, and was overcome with delight at the warmth I experienced from it. In my joy, I thrust my hand into the live embers, but quickly drew it out again with a cry of pain. How strange, I thought, that the same cause should produce such opposite effects. I examined the materials of the fire, and to my joy, found it to be composed of wood. I quickly collected some branches, but they were still wet and would not burn. I was pained at this, and sat still watching the operation of the fire. The wet wood which I had placed near the heat dried, and itself became inflamed. I reflected on this, and by touching the various branches, I discovered the cause and busied myself in collecting a great quantity of wood, that I might dry it and have plentiful supply of fire. When night came on and brought sleep with it, I was in the greatest fear lest my fire should be extinguished. I covered it carefully with dry wood and leaves and placed wet branches upon it, and then, spreading my cloak, I lay on the ground and sank to sleep. It was morning when I awoke, and my first care was to visit the fire. I uncovered it, and a gentle breeze quickly fanned it into a flame. I observed this also, and contrived a fan of branches, which roused the embers when they were nearly extinguished. When night came again, I found, with pleasure, that the fire gave light as well as heat, and that the discovery of this element was useful to me in my food, for I found some of the offals that the travelers had left had been roasted, and tasted much more savory than the berries I gathered from the trees. I tried, therefore, to dress my food in the same manner, placing it on the live embers. I found that the berries were spoiled by this operation, and the nuts and roots much improved. Food, however, became scarce, and I often spent the whole day searching in vain for a few acorns to assuage the pang of hunger. When I found this, I resolved to quit the place that I had hitherto inhabited, to seek for one where the few wants I experienced would be more easily satisfied. In this emigration I exceedingly lamented the loss of the fire which I had obtained through accident, and knew not how to reproduce it. I gave several hours to the serious consideration of this difficulty, but I was obliged to relinquish all attempt to supply it, and wrapping myself up in my cloak, I struck across the wood towards the setting sun. I passed 3 days in these rambles, and at length discovered the open country. A great fall of snow had taken place the night before, and the fields were of one uniform white. The appearance was disconsolate, and I found my feet chilled by the cold, damp surface that covered the ground. It was about 7 in the morning, and I longed to obtain food and shelter. At length I perceived a small hut on a rising ground, which had doubtless been built for the convenience of some shepherd. This was a new sight to me, and I examined the structure with great curiosity. Finding the door open, I entered. An old man sat in it, near a fire, over which he was preparing his breakfast. He turned on hearing a noise, and, perceiving me, shrieked loudly, and quitting the hut, ran across the fields with a speed of which his dilapidated form hardly appeared capable. His appearance different from any I had ever seen before, and his flight somewhat surprised me, but I was enchanted by the appearance of the hut. Here the snow and rain could not penetrate, and the ground was dry, and it presented to me, then, as exquisite and divine a retreat as pandemonium appeared to the demons of hell after their sufferings in the lake of fire. I greedily devoured the remnants of the shepherd's breakfast, which consisted of bread, cheese, milk, and wine. The latter, however, I did not like. Then, overcome by fatigue, I lay down among some straw and fell asleep. It was noon when I awoke, and allured by the warmth of the sun, which shone brightly, on the white ground. I determined to recommence my travels, and depositing the remains of the peasants' breakfasts in a wallet I found, I proceeded across the fields for several hours until, at sunset, I arrived at a village. How miraculous did this appear! The huts, the neater cottages, and stately houses engaged my admiration by turns. The vegetables in the gardens, the milk and cheese that I saw placed at the windows of some of the cottages, allured my appetite. One of the best of these I entered, but I had hardly placed my foot within the door before the children shrieked and one of the women fainted. The whole village was roused. Some fled, some attacked me until, grievously bruised by stones and many other kinds of missile weapons, I escaped to the open country and fearfully took refuge in a low hovel, quite bare, and making a wretched appearance after the palaces I had beheld in the village. This hovel, however, joined a cottage of a neat and pleasant appearance, but after my late dearly bought experience, I dared not enter it. My place of refuge was constructed of wood, but so low that I could with difficulty sit upright in it. No wood, however, was placed on the earth, which formed the floor, but it was dry, and although the wind entered it by innumerable chinks, I found it an agreeable asylum from the snow and rain. Here, then, I retreated, and lay down happy to have found a shelter, however miserable, from the inclemency of the season, and still more from the barbarity of man. As soon as morning dawned, I crept from my kennel, that I might view the adjacent cottage and discover if I could remain in the habitation I had found. It was situated against the back of the cottage and surrounded on the sides, which were exposed by pigsty and a clear pool of water. One part was open, and by that I had crept in, but now I covered every crevice by which I might be perceived with stones and wood, yet in such a manner that I might move them on occasion to pass out. All the light I enjoyed came through the sty, and that was sufficient for me. Having thus arranged my dwelling and carpeted it with clean straw, I retired, for I saw the figure of a man at a distance, and I remembered too well my treatment the night before to trust myself in his power. I had first, however, provided for my sustenance for that day by a loaf of coarse bread, which I purloined, and a cup with which I could drink more conveniently than from my hand of the pure water which flowed by my retreat. The floor was a little raised, so that it was kept perfectly dry, and by its vicinity to the chimney of the cottage, it was tolerably warm. Being thus provided, I resolved to reside in this hovel until something should occur which might alter my determination. It was indeed a paradise compared to the bleak forest, my former residence, the rain-dropping branches, and dank earth. I ate my breakfast with pleasure, and was about to remove a plank to procure myself a little water when I heard a step, and looking through a small chink, I beheld a young creature with a pail on her head passing before my hovel. The girl was young and of gentle demeanor, unlike what I had since found cottagers and farmhouse servants to be. yet she was meanly dressed, a coarse blue petticoat and a linen jacket being her only garb. Her fine hair was plaited but not adorned. She looked patient yet sad. I lost sight of her, and in about a quarter of an hour she returned bearing the pail, which was now partly filled with milk. As she walked along, seemingly incommoded by the burden, a young man met her, whose countenance expressed a deeper despondence. Uttering a few sounds with an air of melancholy, he took the pail from her head and bore it to the cottage himself. She followed, and they disappeared. Presently I saw the young man again, with some tools in his hands, cross the field behind the cottage, and the girl was also busied, sometimes in the house and sometimes in the yard. On examining my dwelling, I found that one of the windows of the cottage had formerly occupied it, but the panes had been filled up with wood. In one of these was a small and almost imperceptible chink through which the eye could just penetrate. Through this crevice a small room was visible, whitewashed and clean, but very bare of furniture. In one corner, near a small fire, sat an old man, leaning his head on his hands in a disconsolate attitude. The young girl was occupied in arranging the cottage, but presently she took something out of a drawer, which employed her hands, and she sat down beside the old man, who, taking up an instrument, began to play and to produce sounds sweeter than the voice of the thrush or the nightingale. It was a lovely sight, even to me, poor wretch who had never beheld aught beautiful before. The silver hair and benevolent countenance of the aged cottager won my reverence, while the gentle manners of the girl enticed my love. He played a sweet mournful air which I perceived drew tears from the eyes of his amiable companion, of which the old man took no notice, until she sobbed audibly. He then pronounced a few sounds, and the fair creature, leaving her work, knelt at his feet. He raised her and smiled with such kindness and affection that I felt sensations of a peculiar and overpowering nature. They were a mixture of pain and pleasure, such as I had never before experienced, either from hunger or cold, warmth or food, and I withdrew from the window, unable to bear these emotions. Soon after this, the young man returned, bearing on his shoulders a load of wood. The girl met him at the door, helped to relieve him of his burden, and taking some of the fuel into the cottage, placed it on the fire. Then she and the youth went apart into a nook of the cottage, and he showed her a large loaf and a piece of cheese. She seemed pleased and went into the garden for some roots and plants, which she placed in the water and then upon the fire. She afterwards continued her work, whilst the young man went into the garden and apparently busily employed in digging and pulling up roots. After he had been employed thus about an hour, the young woman joined him, and they entered the cottage together. The old man had, in the meantime, been pensive, But on the appearance of his companions, he assumed a more cheerful air, and they sat down to eat. The meal was quickly dispatched. The young woman was again occupied in arranging the cottage. The old man walked before the cottage in the sun for a few minutes, leaning on the arm of the youth. Nothing could exceed in beauty the contrast between these two excellent creatures. One was old, with silver hairs and a countenance beaming with benevolence and love. The younger was slight and graceful in his figure, and his features were molded with the finest symmetry, yet his eyes and attitude expressed the utmost sadness and despondency. The old man returned to the cottage, and the youth, with tools different from those he had used in the morning, directed his steps across the fields. Night quickly shut in, but to my extreme wonder, I found that the cottagers had means of prolonging night by the use of tapers, and was delighted to find that the setting of the sun did not put an end to the pleasure I experienced in watching my human neighbors. In the evening, the young girl and her companion were employed in various occupations which I did not understand, and the old man again took up the instrument which produced the divine sounds that had enchanted me in the morning. Soon he had finished. The youth began, not to play, but to utter sounds that were monotonous, and neither resembling the harmony of the old man's instrument, nor the songs of the birds. I since found that he read aloud, but by that time I knew nothing of the science of words or letters. The family, after having been thus occupied for a short time, extinguished their lights and retired, as I conjectured, to rest. Well, that, my dear fishies, was chapter 11 of Frankenstein. And if you are just now joining us, I do greatly apologize. We are at the end of my stream. However, need not worry. I have many YouTube videos of which you can listen to me read to you for several hours. I do also have an ASMR video in which I can help you fall asleep. But we are going to raid out. If you are on Twitch, you will be part of the raid. I do encourage you to join me for the raid. I would greatly appreciate the company. And if you are not on Twitch, I highly encourage you to join the Discord server. You can choose what you would like to be notified for, whether you want to be notified for movie nights, which will be happening tomorrow and Sunday, any of my YouTube videos, or social media posts. I am so happy and grateful that I have had the opportunity to help you relax and perhaps go to sleep today. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining me and choosing to relax with me. If you are watching on TikTok or YouTube, the stream for you is just going to end. But again, I encourage you to go to the link in my bio or my profile and join us in the Discord. Is the 5K redeem an actual ASMR video uploaded to YouTube or happened in stream? So the ASMR redeem is meant to be a short social media post. That's why I think I call it short ASMR. Let me double check on that. Yes, it is short ASMR video, meaning that it will be posted as like a YouTube Shorts or a TikTok video or a Instagram Reel. And that would happen off stream, but that I would make it for you, but I would post it on social media. If you are on Twitch, please copy the raid message and we will join into somebody who is also reading. And without further ado, this is the part where we say our goodnights, our goodbyes, and our see you tomorrows. I will be back again tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time Zone. I highly encourage you to join us because we will be starting a new book, and this one is not a classic public domain book. It is actually the work of another streamer on Twitch. So I am extremely excited for this partnership, and as I've already read the book, I am extremely excited to share with you this amazing story. So, please copy the raid message, join us for the raid, join the Discord if you aren't already in the Discord, and until tomorrow, please drink your water, eat your food, be kind to yourself and others, and have a great night.